Where does this all kind of, what's coming? I think developers and gamers have really been looking for something new for quite a while. I know I've been excited for something new. Something's got to break on this, and we've got to get a new experience. We really do believe it's finally the time for virtual reality to be that new experience. And this is a motion-controlled display that really renders everything correctly, all in the right place. And again, VR has been imagined for so many years, but it's finally ready. Hardware is finally there. And we were fortunate enough to be one of the first companies. Sony with the HMD was not. This is not virtual reality. Some people think, well, what about Sony's thing? That's not virtual reality. That is literally a TV stuck to your face. It doesn't have motion control. It can be an interesting experience, maybe for a plane, maybe for a small audience, but it's not VR, not to be confused with. Google's doing some really awesome stuff on the glass, but that's also really not virtual reality. That's projected reality. I mean, many people, when I say it's augmented reality, go, no, it's not even augmented reality. It's projected reality. It's this thing up in the corner of your eye. It's not going to give you Call of Duty or Battlefield or some incredible experience. We believe that Oculus is the first wide field of view, virtual reality, kind of taste of virtual reality that the market has been able to see, that the consumer market has been able to really get a hold of. Sometimes internally we kind of joke that the developer kit that we've been shipping is kind of like Doom. It's kind of halfway there. It's not really all the way there. It's only 3 degrees of freedom, and you really need more than that to have the full VR experience. And I'll go into that in a bit. But it's been very exciting. I mean, people put on the Oculus, and we joke that they instantly make the Oculus face. And it's kind of this, oh my God moment. This really works. I'm in the game. This is incredible. So why don't we bring up Aaron Davies. We're going to do a quick live demo. And Aaron's going to jump in Unreal Engine 4. This is one of the most modern, cutting-edge engines out there. So he has now stepped into the Elemental demo. You've probably seen this demoed by Sony and a number of other people on modern next-gen consoles. Aaron is now actually in this experience. So what he's seeing is fully immersive. It feels like he's really there. He's floating around 360 degrees. He can look up. He can look down. I mean, he literally just went into the Elemental world. He is no longer here at the conference. Aaron, you can come back to the conference. Yeah. Welcome back. So the way that this works is internally inside of this headset, there's a screen. And kind of the magic of what makes a lot of this possible, frankly, is mobile devices. It's actually the mobile screen that we were able to use and put inside of the headset. Mobile screens are getting higher resolution all the time. They're getting better quality. They're also pretty inexpensive, considering they're made in the literally hundreds of millions of units these days. So inside you have a cell phone screen tilted on its side, so in landscape mode, and you have a left and right eye being rendered. Now, I'll dive in a little bit on the tech side here. This starts to be awfully GPU intensive. So the rendering of VR is really going to bring modern GPUs to their knees, especially as the resolution goes up. If you know about the developer kit that we first shipped, it's 1280 by 800. So you got 1280 by 800. Sounds like a low resolution. And when you look at it, it kind of looks low resolution. Unfortunately, or fortunately for AMD and some of the GPU guys, in VR, you have to do an awful lot of extra computing to really make this work. For one thing, you have to render in stereo, so you have to render 2 complete views. You can't do tricks. You can't fake stereo 3D. You have to really render it twice. One for the left eye, one for the right eye. You also need to do super sampling. You actually need to render the image a little bit bigger so that you can get the full field of view and you eliminate aliasing. You also have to do full screen MSAA. You need to do 4x MSAA often. So now you have super sampling, you have full screen MSAA, you're rendering at a higher resolution, and at the end you have to do a full screen shader over the whole interface, the whole screen, to do the distortion. The lenses have some distortion built into them. We use pixel shaders to go and vertex shaders to counteract that distortion and correct for it. Also chromatic aberration. So you have this not too expensive but fairly complicated pixel shader that has to run over the whole scene. You add all of that up, it's awfully taxing. What Aaron just stepped in is the HD prototype. We've now taken the resolution from 1280 by 800 to 1920 by 1080 for the full screen. Imagine that in stereo, super sampled with 4x MSAA. I mean, this is pushing the limit of what any modern GPU can do today. And the resolution's only going to continue to go up. Cell phone screens are continuing to get higher resolution. We're going to continue to push for higher resolution in the headset. It really makes a difference. Somewhere in the far future, not to be quoted that we're coming out with this today, you'll get resolutions in the 8K, 12K, where it'll start to kind of plateau out in terms of what you can visually see. That's not today. That's far into the future. But you can imagine the kind of GPU you're going to need as this continues to improve and increase. So we're just getting started with VR, and it's already bringing today's GPUs to their knees. Looking a little bit deeper into how this works, to really get this experience comfortable for everybody, let's take a look at the path of motion to photons. So when you put the headset on and you move around, you're creating this motion. This motion is being read in by sensors. Today there's a gyroscope in there. There's going to be optical tracking and cameras that we're adding for positional tracking and things like that over time in the future. So you're reading these sensors. You're sending down the sensor data over USB. There's about a millisecond of time it takes to send it down over USB. It then goes into the game engine. The game engine, let's say at best, we're running at 60 FPS. How many games have a locked 60 FPS today? Not that many. Well, we needed at least 60 FPS today to really have this be a great experience. So you have that locked 60 FPS. That adds another 16 milliseconds. 60 FPS is 60 milliseconds per frame. So you get the sensor data, you recalculate for the new view, you now have your new thing to render, you push that out to the GPU, it gets rendered, it then gets sent to the display. Well, when it gets sent to the display, it's scanning out and it's filling out the rows or columns. To fill out the entire display takes about 60 hertz, 16 milliseconds. So now we're at 32, 33, 34 with this loop. We then go and have to actually look at, and many people don't think about this, but the pixel switching time. So an LCD per pixel to go from orange to brown or from red to green actually takes another 12 to 16 milliseconds. So if you add all of that up, by the time you've moved to get the new image to actually, the photons to hit your eye, you're at around 50 milliseconds. And that is the dev kit that we're shipping today is around 40, 50 milliseconds from motion to photon. If you have any stalls in your game, I think Carmack just recently sent me an email. I said, do you have any comments for the keynote? And he said, make sure that you let everybody know when you're moving your head, you have to have that locked 60 FPS. If you drop a frame, he said, dropping a frame while moving your head feels like somebody hit you in the temple. It's not a great experience. So you really have to have this locked, and you have to get this down. But 50 milliseconds, again, if you're familiar with the developer kit, how many people have tried the Oculus developer kit? Anywhere, all right, a few of you. The rest of you should go try it today. What you will try today in the HD prototype is 50 milliseconds. And what you'll see is when you're moving around, this ends up having a persistence problem where the whole scene kind of smears because you're getting these pixels that are switching, and as soon as it starts switching the columns, the pixels themselves have the 16 millisecond switching time, so they're rising from or falling from one color to another. And as you're moving around, everything smears together. And so it's kind of VR is smearing around until you stop, and then it looks good. And then you smear over here, and then it looks good. So you get this incredible motion blur. Well, that's just not good enough for the mass market. That's not going to be good enough for consumers. So what we're really looking at internally for the future is to actually deliver a much faster experience. What we're looking at is delivering something on the order of 15 milliseconds, less than 20. But 7 to 15 is kind of the holy grail of where you want to lie, and that was quoted by Abrash. I think Carmack came out and said less than 20 is going to be good enough, and Abrash said it really needs to be between 7 and 15. And this is awfully hard to do. When I first started and got into Oculus and being a programmer and kind of understanding how this worked, I didn't think we were going to see this so fast. We now have internal prototypes inside of Oculus. Valve also has internal prototypes at Valve that they've been working with us on R&Ding, where we are able to reach this kind of performance. And the experience is magical. It literally changes everything. You go into VR in the future, you'll go into VR, there will be no pixel smearing. There will be no motion blur. It will be very comfortable. You'll literally get this latency will be a checked off, solved solution. We're not there yet today, but it's coming very quickly. So how do you do that? You have to go in. Again, it's 1 millisecond on the sensor, but you got to get that game engine running, 500 frames per second, 1,000 frames per second? Probably not. That's probably not realistic. We're already having a hard time at 60 FPS. But there are some tricks you can do. Leave it, again, to game developers to do some tricks. There are tricks you can do to actually get the game time separated and to run much, much faster. So what you do is you separate your game thread from your rendering thread, and you now have your rendering thread that's locked at the same frame rate, refresh rate, as the screen. So the rendering thread may end up having to be 80, 85, 90 FPS, while the game itself could run slower. And then you can do some things like time warping, where you read the sensor in the beginning, you update the game to be the new view. The rendering thread, meanwhile, is asking the game thread for the last scene. And it keeps grabbing the last scene, and when it sends that scene to the screen, it keeps reading the sensor. And as it continues to read the sensor, it warps the image into where it really is supposed to be. So it's not truly getting there, but it's tricking your eyes there, and it really is a great experience. You then have the display side. You still have to fill up these columns. It's still fairly slow to fill up these columns. So we're, somewhere around 11 milliseconds is about an 80 to 85, maybe 90 hertz refresh rate, which is very important to get it not 60, but actually more like 90. And then you have your pixel switching time, which unfortunately LCD is just not going to cut it to be 11, 12 milliseconds. You really need to get it down to less than 1. So you can probably guess there's this other very exciting display technology out there that luckily does have a pixel switching time less than 1 millisecond, which is OLED. So we've been internally R&Ding this. We have gotten this down. It's very exciting with the work that we've done, the work that Valve's done. You literally can get this to run at this incredible rate where it feels comfortable. This now starts to be awfully taxing on the computer. This needs modern computing. When you do things like add in cameras and optical tracking to get your position data, because orientation is not good enough, you also need your position translation data. You have to do that typically with optical tracking. You're now taking camera data in, and you're trying to do all of this at the same time that you're now eating up CPU using for decoding the sensor data of the camera and getting the translation there. So this is just the beginning. Today, we're just really focusing on vision, and already we're starting to really hit the limits of the CPU and GPU today. Imagine when we add more cameras and we try to get your hands in the game. One of the first experiences when people put it on, they make the Oculus face, oh my gosh. And then the second thing they do is go, where's my hand? Where's my body? When am I going to see this? And it's like, patience, it's good enough. Aren't you amazed at how good, put your hands down and look around. But you do. You want to see your hands. You're going to want eye tracking. You're going to want mouth tracking. You're going to want, you really do want to be fully immersed in the game. It's not going to happen for V1. Probably not going to see our hands for V1. But it is going to come, and every time we add that new camera to do some new tracking, every time we add a new sensor, we're going to be coming back to the CPU needing more computing power. We're going to be coming back to the GPU every time we increase the resolution, wanting more resolution. So we largely believe that VR is going to reignite a lot of the kind of CPU-GPU race that has in some ways slowed down and kind of plateaued on 2D screens. VR is going to get it going again. So we're bringing out the Oculus Rift. Can't tell you when yet, but we are making it better. We really want to get this right. If you don't get it right, many of you will be sick. So you want to get it right. You want us to get it right. With the Oculus, you're going to be able to go in and explore user-generated worlds. It's going to be incredible. There's already some mods to make Minecraft work. I think it's called Minecraft. It's very exciting. You're going to be able to get in cockpits and really feel like you're truly in the cockpit itself. We showed Hawken for the first time at GDC. People were running to the booth. It was just an awesome experience to see. You're going to be able to see scale and height for the first time. You can look up. And one of the best experiences we have in the prototype internally that now has everything dialed in with the, super low latency and the positional tracking and everything there is just literally floating through this kind of space world. And you can float through it for maybe not hours, but you can float through it for a long time. Not even doing anything, just floating, being amazed at the sense of scale. You're going to be able to look up at monsters and be totally terrified of these incredible monsters for the first time. I haven't really been that terrified on a 2D screen before. You will be terrified in VR, and it will be incredibly exciting. You'll also, something that we haven't really spoken that much about in the past, you will engage with players. You will engage with both multiplayers, you'll engage with bots. For the first time, you'll make eye contact, and when you're moving around, they're going to follow your eyes, you're going to follow them. I mean, you're going to emotionally feel like you're really there. And emotion is going to be a very big part of VR. So, without further ado, we're very happy to show one of the first made-for-VR games. This was originally done by 5 developers inside of CCP. They picked up Unity. They, on their own free time, made this tech demo. They took it to EVE Fan Fest. It got a lot of people like it. Then they took it to E3. They won more awards than I think almost any PC game has won in an awful long time. That's literally just PC, made for PC right now. I don't know where they're going to take it in the future. But they showed it off with the Oculus Rift, EVR. Let's see the trailer. This is literally the first high production made for VR game. Many, many more will come. It's an absolutely incredible experience. A lot of the press said it was one of the best experiences or the best they've seen in nearly a decade. So we are incredibly excited to have CCP so engaged on this. There's hundreds of other VR games being made. Many of them are being made by indies because it's a relatively new platform. But people are exploring this new uncharted territory. It's just an awesome place to be. Virtual reality is finally here. We've all imagined it for so long. It literally is arriving now, and it is going to change the world. It's also going to need an awful lot of computing. Thank you. And for more information, you can go to, I did remember my links.
Thanks a lot. Great.
Thank you.
Great.
Yep.
Hey, Brendan, wait, don't go anywhere just yet. Don't go anywhere just yet. Thank you so much. That was excellent.
Thank you.
Still have time, I think, maybe for 1 or 2 questions.
Sure.
You still up for that?
Yep.
So like we did yesterday, we have team members in the audience with microphones. If you guys have a question for Brendan, for Oculus VR, we'd love to take them right now. Any questions? Hands up, and I'll send a mic your way. Here in the front row. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tara Nair from Tom's Hardware. So I had the pleasure to check out the Oculus demo at the Experience Zone today. And the only real question I have is, when can we get a version that I can wear over my glasses?
That is a very good question. Glasses. Especially for a lot of the hardcore gamers, which we've all burned out our eyes on the monitor. We are working on supporting glasses and supporting people who have nearsightedness and farsightedness. So it is something that's at the top of the priority list. We'll have to let you know more in the future, but it'll definitely be there.
Great.
That's as much as I can say today.
Okay, I think
we're working on it. I wear glasses too.
Okay, yeah. I think we all do on the stage right now. Over here.
So one of the things you emphasized was that you really need to hit 60 frames per second in order to have a smooth experience, and sometimes even higher. Would you say that the key is actually the frame rendering latency? Because that seems to be what you're going for, and that you really want to squeeze that, as low as you can go.
Yeah, there are a number of aspects to latency. Again, it's this full loop of motion to photon. So you get the sensor data in, then you have your game ticking, which is at 60 FPS to update the scene to be in the new correct perspective. That's one part of the latency. That's at 60 FPS. The faster you can make that, the better. Really what you want to do is actually get on the rendering side, you're probably going to want it more at 80 or 90 FPS to update to the screen. You're also going to want to take the screen and remove the persistence. So the persistence of, if you move your head, and you can move pretty fast, you can cover a lot of degrees very fast. If this image is sitting on your face for 30 milliseconds while you're moving, the whole world is going to drag with you until it gets updated. That doesn't feel so good. Now, LCDs actually kind of hide that by blurring the whole thing while you move, and you don't see how much of the scene is actually dragging on your retina until it's updated with the new position. With low persistence, where you actually have the screen, you turn off the screen for most of the time. So most of the view when you're in the headset, if you looked at it with a high-speed camera, it's mostly black. It's literally mostly turned off. You then only are turning it on for 1 or 2 milliseconds when the image is exactly in the right place and you can update. And you can even kind of strobe across, and we're doing all kinds of R&D on trying to figure out how to remove that latency, that persistence of how long the image persists on your eye incorrectly. You only want it to be on your eye correctly and then be black and then get a correct image and then get a correct image. And that makes a much more comfortable experience if you run fast enough. If you run at 60 blinking, we're back to kind of the staring at the old CRTs blinking at 60 hertz, and the flicker can be pretty painful. So you do need this high frame rate to get there.
So you're looking at
Great.
Sorry, so you're looking at around 10 milliseconds ideally for rendering latency.
You'd like to be updating to your eye, strobing across somewhere around every 10 milliseconds. You get a new image, but that image that you get is only going to be given to you in 1 to 2 millisecond chunks. So it's only going to be flashed for 1 millisecond while it's correct, and then it's going to be turned off while it's not correct. So you don't drag this world with you. I think Michael Abrush is going to be, and Oculus, both Valve and Oculus, are going to be talking an awful lot more about this in the future. And there'll be, again, more information is coming if you check out those blogs over the next couple weeks to months as we really expose how a lot of this is starting to work.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, Brendan, let's end on that note.
Yep.
I really appreciate you taking a little extra time for Q&A and for being here. How about another round of applause? Thank you for Brendan. Oculus
Thank you,
VR.
guys. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, I'm holding something here that I want to remind you guys about. You guys might remember when Lisa Sue was up here Monday afternoon, she talked about the drawing where you can have the chance to win one of two, speaking of powering a lot of pixels and a lot of frames per second, one of two R9 290X graphics cards, which we have here. You can bring it with you if you've got room in that bag, if you're so lucky to be a winner, or we can ship it to you, as well as 3 Kavari A10 APU-based systems when those are available. Obviously, those would be shipped. Still open until noon. Make sure you guys have, filled out the little form at the registration desk and that you've entered for that. We'd love to see some of you guys take that beautiful hardware home. We also, if we can pull, do we have the URL slide for Sony? I'd like to remind everybody of the Sony call to action for visiting visiting their developer site. Wanted to make sure we circled back and thanked Dominic, thanked him so much for the PlayStation 4 and for sharing, the design point of the PS4, the role that AMD could play with the APU and the IP that's brought to bear there. So us.playstation.com/develop. That's where you guys need to go if you're interested in getting on board with the PlayStation 4 development. Okay, now Brendan needs to leave. Wanted to do a couple of Q&A with you guys. We were glad we were able to do that. Dominic will be in the thought leadership area and the experience zone, available for those of you who have a few additional questions for him, want to get to meet him, talk a little bit about the PS4. So that's coming up immediately. Manju, what else we got?
And we've got a few other exciting sessions today afternoon and the rest of the morning. We've got a panel on the future of gaming, where we've got some of the leaders in gaming who will tell you where they see the direction of gaming going. We also have a second session on Mantle. The session yesterday was oversubscribed, so a lot of people had to be turned away. So I think this is a a second one to accommodate that extra demand. We have demos of real-time 4K HDR decoding that will be in the Experience Hub.
If I could just interject, Manju, just so you guys are aware, since it's not in your official program, the additional mantle session is in room 210H. 210H, if you were one of the people, unfortunately, who could not get into the mantle session yesterday. 210H at, I think it was, is it
11 a.m.
11. Yeah, it's at 11. Thank you. All right, sorry. Back to you, Manju. 11, 210H.
And then, as I was saying, we have a 4K decoding demo done by Gary Demos. Gary Demos is an Oscar winner. He did a lot of the video processing for Tron and several movies. A genuine Oscar winner. And then we have a survey raffle.
I just talked about that.
Okay.
Yep, we're good.
And then the last two keynotes this afternoon will be first from Johan Anderson, who is the chief architect of DICE and the Frostbite engine. He's arguably one of the top 3 or the top 5 game developers in the world. And also from AMD CTO, Mark Papermaster, who is the CTO of the feistiest technology company in the world.
That's great. Okay, with that, we'll adjourn. Thanks so much. It's a great morning so far.